Three commits headed to Madison. Let's talk about the defensive line replacements as well as a really interesting in-state linebacker on Wisconsin. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herring, so really do appreciate you being here. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I am joined by the great Justin Jolka. We are talking about three commits, plus a little Q&A. Plus, if you guys have anything going on, any questions you have with recruiting, throw them in the chat as well. Justin, let us start with, I'm just going to call him DJ Bah, because honest to goodness, I'm not sure how to pronounce his first name.
Yeah, I know Nick reported it somewhere earlier today, how to say it. It's D-Woo or something like that. Like, yeah, Bah. But we'll say DJ Bah because I know he said that that's how you can call him too. So
I'm going to call him DJ Bah.
DJ Bah.
He was the last of the commits today. DJ Bah, three-star defensive lineman, Germantown, Tennessee, 6'3", 255, 260, somewhere in that range. Offers from Michigan State, Indiana, Northwestern, Iowa. Obviously a good indicator of defensive line and offensive line talent at Iowa. Let's put the film up and then let's talk a little bit about DJ Bah. Justin, I like the burst. There is burst here. There's ability to find some gaps in the offensive line. I like his explosiveness.
He gets skinny well too.
Incredibly well. Like gapping, running plays, offensive line plays. He sheds pretty well. I just like the physical tools here. I think there's a ton of upside with Bah.
Yep. He's a guy that Iowa badly wanted and that we were able to grab. And that's every time I see that, like Iowa knows what they're looking for defensive guys. When you have a coaching staff on the defensive side that's done it well for a decade plus, you can feel pretty good about your evaluation on a guy. I do think he's pretty raw, but I do think there's a lot of natural ability and tools there. And yeah, he's got really good burst. He does some things naturally that take guys time. And he can get by on some physical tools. And I think he's a guy that I really think has some long-term high ceiling with him.
I love this clip here. We got the film up right now. There's the ability in open space to break down, which for a 6'3", 255-pounder, you don't see.
He's light on his feet.
It shows some agility, right? It shows some light ankles, the ability to move laterally a little bit, get down the line of scrimmage. There's some great motor plays in this. And I also think with this one, Justin, and you tell me if you think I'm crazy. And if you're in the chat watching on YouTube, you're watching the film too. You know, there's people that know ball that watch this channel. I mean, Zach Bart's for sure. Tyler Streber's in the chat. Matt Anderson. Tell us what you think of the film as you're watching it with us. I think there's positional versatility here. This to me feels like a guy who can be an edge rusher, but he's going to put on some weight. He feels like a guy who could also be an interior pass rusher on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8.
Yeah, I think he's more to me when I look at him as a 3 or 5. And I'd say like big edge. Yeah, I questioned this when we saw him as an interior guy that I just don't know if you want to put 300 pounds on this guy. I think you're probably comfortable with him potentially at 280, but I don't know about him as a true hand in the dirt edge rusher because he is a little short. He's only 6'3", and I wouldn't say that he's super long as a 6'3" guy. So I worry about him getting swallowed up by tackles with length. That said, I do like his physical skill set, but I think he projects better a little bit in that closer to the interior part. And our edges seem to be plus length guys from what we've been going after. But I do think he can pass rush for sure. He's absolutely got some disruption ability.
Yeah, I think the burst allows them to play on the edge. Just because that's going to get better. There's a couple plays here you can see he doesn't quite time up the snap, but even on this one, he still bends the edge and gets around to it. I think that burst is going to increase his recognition of the game, and situational awareness is going to increase as reps happen. Like this guy's a bit of a project. I think we would agree on that. But the physical tools, I think you mentioned this on a previous show. You're looking for guys whose physical tools measure up to like a 4-star level. This is the guy who could play up to that level as he develops.
Absolutely. I think that's a big deal. Is you want to find guys who maybe are raw, but you can see the ceiling. And I think that's when you look at it from the standpoint of looking at when people talk about, well, Wisconsin can't keep grabbing 3 stars. It's like, it depends on what you're grabbing for 3 stars. Like if those are guys that are capable with a couple of years in the program playing like 4 stars, that's fine. You just don't want to be taking guys who are 3 stars or in 2 years are going to be playing like little 3 stars, because that's a problem.
Yeah, that is an issue. This to me, let's talk timeline with all these guys. This to me feels like a guy that's a year or two out.
Yeah,
this is not a
absolutely.
guy. You agree there?
Yep. I think you're looking at him as a redshirt sophomore type of guy that's in the rotation. I think one of the things that with the program that I've felt the most uncomfortable with, I think people have gotten really short-sighted in what the turnaround time is for defensive linemen since Fickle took over. And like we look at a guy like Jamel Howard, who's just going to be a redshirt sophomore, and people are like saying, "Well, he's done. Like he's disappeared. He's never going to be anything." It's like, this is realistically the first year that you'd probably truly be like on a team that's got their act together. This is the first year you'd be expecting him to have to take reps. The problem is Wisconsin's been so thin. You're praying that he's capable of playing before that.
Yeah, I would say, and I've said this before, I've said this a bunch on shows, I think that's for all positions. I think the transfer portal era has sped up everybody's expectations. Because I remember people commenting last year, like, man, what's wrong with Dylan Jones? Why isn't he getting on the field? Where's Darian Dupree more? You know, it's sped up everything. And you and I have talked about it a little bit too. Some of these guys, you wouldn't even have heard the name Tucker Ashcraft 10 years ago until this year. And people are already ready to write him off because, well, he hasn't looked good the first 2 years. He's a true junior. Like this is when he should be getting on the field to begin with.
Yeah. I talked earlier today too. This is one of the things when I said about the 3-star comp. I'm like, look at all the Badger linebacker talent that's in the NFL right now. There's not one of them that was a 4-star. I'm like, every single one of them was at best a 3.
Ben Ginko was a 4, right? As a portal guy, transfer guy.
Maybe as a transfer he was, but he wasn't out of high school.
Right.
TJ Watt was a 3-star tight end. You had Bond was I think a 3-star gray shirt. You had obviously the only one that truly was, you could look at Ryan, or you could look at Jack Sanborn. He was a 4-star coming out. Yeah. And other than him, he's the only guy that was truly thought of as a 4-star. Chanel was a high 3. So you had all these guys, and it's like, but you could project some of them. And you can look at the physical talent, and that's kind of what you're looking at with this group.
Tyler has a good point. Herbig
was a 4. Like he's the one guy that was legitimately like straight up a 4-star.
Yeah, that's a good point from Tyler, who's a real one. This seems like a good place to put this comment in here from ZYT. Says, I'm concerned that all the commits are the lowest rated players. So the last 3 commits, if you just look at the composite that we're going to talk about today, Bah, Wenzel, and Scott are the 3 lowest rated players in the class. You just kind of talked about it a little bit as well, looking for the physical traits. Yeah. I'll also just say, to some degree, I mean, not even to some degree, these are all the Plan A guys. First visit of the official visit season. These are guys that the staff has been on, they believe in. So to some level, you have to trust the staff here because these are Plan A guys.
Yeah.
I do agree with ZYT just in the sense of there are some big battles that eventually you have to win. You can't live on underrated, under-recruited 3-star guys.
Oh, absolutely. You have to augment that core group with some guys that are difference makers. So you can't miss on everything, but you can get by if you have a bunch of guys that play up. Like we look at the Badger, even on the best offensive lines, those 2010 classes and the 2011, that was largely built on 3-star talent in the trenches. Like when we started getting the 4-star guys, that's when we started to have guys that weren't achieving their potential.
By the way, that's also what happened to Michigan State. If you remember Michigan State coming off those Big Ten championship runs,
a couple of 5-stars that never turned into anything.
Then they started recruiting 4-star, 5-star guys, and they lost their edge. You know, I'm not saying. Listen, don't get me wrong. You need Alabama also recruits a lot of 4- and 5-star guys, and they do just fine.
The difference is they can weed out a few that if they don't hit, they just disappear. We can't afford to just stack over the top of a bunch of 4- and 5-stars. They've got to hit.
Yeah, you got to find the right mix. It's not all 3-star stuff, but we're going to talk about a guy next, and we're going to get into that, who I think might be my favorite commit of this 3-commit group that committed this weekend. I love the in-state linebacker. I think he is an underrated guy. I'm excited to talk about him with my guy, Justin. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show, and a quick second to say thank you for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at Monarch Money. If you're ever like me and you're a little curious where all your money's going, I mean, listen, Monarch Money tells me straight up where mine goes. I spend so much money eating out. It's ridiculous. And Monarch Money tells me, like, straight up, Ryan, you need to stop with this. Monarch Money is like a personal CFO. They basically take all of your accounts, put it into one spot. You can collaborate with your significant other, your partner, create goals, budgets. It's something I use, and it's something that sends me alerts to my phone. Hey, this came out, that came out. It can help you track hidden expenses. It can help you plan goals and budgets, and it's all done in a really visual dashboard that's absolutely incredible. So if you want to be a little bit better with your money, meet some of your financial goals, plan ahead, create some budgets, but do it in a way that is simple, easy, visual, and really, really user-friendly. Head over to Monarch Money right now. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LockedOnCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LockedOnCollege for half off your first year. Justin, let's get into this next guy who, again, I teased it. I think Ben Wenzel is probably my favorite commit of this weekend. I love the film. I'm going to let you start on Wenzel because I haven't actually heard your thoughts on him yet. I'm going to put the film up.
Sure. I made a comparison in our show to Sanborn a little bit in terms of how he plays. I was wrong on that. And actually the guy who I was thinking of that I think actually fits him best, Ryan Connolly. I see some comparison there. He's got really good burst downhill when he sees what he's looking for. He's a guy who is very instinctual. He does a pretty good job of sifting through. He's a good tackler. He's just a guy who's just going to make plays. Like, he's a football player. You watch him, and he's always going to play up above whatever his ranking is. He's going to be above that. He's a guy who probably runs a 4.8, plays like he runs a 4.7, because he's always a step quicker than what you'd expect him to be for the athletic profile.
I love this film. I love the film. I think he's faster than a 4.8 guy. I think he'll be like a 4.7.
I thought he was legitimately timed at that.
Maybe it's just playing up because the anticipation and this is also a guy that first 10-yard split might be a lot quicker.
Yeah.
The 40 is a 4.8.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. We talked about that last season with
Brendan Haynes. Brendan Haynes was the guy whose 10-yard split was probably crazy. Here's the thing. I think if Wenzel was somewhere else and playing in Tennessee or playing in Oklahoma, I think you'd have more offers. I think people would look at him as more of an athlete. But Wisconsin linebackers always get the moniker, like, lunch pail guy. I think he's more of an athlete than that. I think he's an athlete.
He's fluid.
Really quick north-south. Like, that's one of the things I wrote down, man. When so what do you need to be a good north-south guy? You got to trust your eyes too. He trusts his eyes, puts the foot in the ground, and then just gets through blocks really easily. I love him. I think he's got low 4-star, high 3-star type potential when this thing is over.
I think I would agree with him being roughly in that area. I think 48 to 90. I'm sorry, 88 to 90 is probably the range that I would throw him in. And I wouldn't really argue with either, like, on either end of that if you put him in there. I think that he's a guy who's going to be a player. I think that he'll absolutely get himself into the 2 deep. And I know that position is getting super deep, but I trust that he's going to do a good job and develop there. Honestly, I think that that's going to be a position that going forward is probably going to be the strength of the defense in a couple of years.
It feels like it, man. And this is just a 6'3" rangy athlete. Here's the thing. You can't have too many of those guys no matter what, right? Because you're going to need guys on special teams. And you see clips of him playing special teams, which matters to me because it shows that athletes give a crap. You got to kind of give a crap to be the dude on defense and then also go play field goal block, which he's actually doing right now. Like, it's like I timed that up. I think there's a ton to like here. By the way, Vince Abney says, I made a live stream. What's up, Vince? Let's go, my brother. Welcome. So
I do find it like interesting. Do you notice that the athletic profile of our inside linebackers has gotten a lot bigger? We've gone from guys who are in that 6 foot 6'1" range to 6'3".
You've gone from like the
longer frame.
Yeah, the Orr types to guys like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Now, I wonder if that's just at some level you take what you can find. Like, next cycle, maybe they find a 6-foot athletic dynamo that they're going to take as well. But it does feel like we've shifted in that direction.
We don't have many guys like that we actually target, though. That's the thing. Like, we don't seem to be going after that frame. I think they have a frame, a skill set that they like. But what I will say is that he's got that frame, but he really comes to the ball, which his instincts are great. He's ahead of schedule on that already. If he gets once he gets his feet wet in the defense, this is a guy that I think you'll hear a lot about probably in every fall camp in spring football because he's going to make plays.
Let me ask you this. Last couple questions on Wenzel before we move on to the next defense alignment. Where would you rack and stack him with Gauthier and Catalano? I think he's at the top of those three coming out of high school for me.
Catalano was so productive. I think that him. I would probably say that those two are about the same. Gauthier, I would say, is a tick behind them, but I still think like anything can happen when they get into college. I don't think the gap is that big that you can really decide on who's going to be the guy. I will say Catalano has obviously had an incredible spring, and he's probably a guy that's going to be in the 2 deep come season start. So it will get really interesting. That room is going to get crazy going forward. We know who the top 2 guys are. I have no idea what by season's end the top 2 or the 2 backups are going to be.
Yeah,
it could be Catalano. It could be Posa could be in there somewhere. You have Turner who's hanging around in there. There's a number of different guys. It could be Janzi as a guy who could end up being in there.
It's a shame Heiberger got dinged up again, man. Yeah. We're getting into the spot where injuries might start really curtailing his.
Did you consider him an inside linebacker for real? Like, it feels like he's an overhang. Like, he's more of like a roaming pass rusher than he is a true middle linebacker.
I could see that. I'm worried that he's going to be positionless is more than anything else, right? I'm worried he's going to be Arrington Farrar, where they keep trying to shift him to find the right spot, and it never really happens.
I think he was fine where he was. Like,
his
skill set doesn't feel totally different than Clayton. I think Clayton has a little more burst than him. Like, he's twitchier, but I don't feel like the gap was super big between the two of them. I don't like him in space. I just don't. Like, you and I, we watched his high school film. He was never dropping, and I don't think he's got the hips for it. That's not a ding on Heiberger. I think he's got an incredible skill set for pass rushing and being a guy who can attack. I just don't know if I love him dropping back into open space and saying, hey, stick with the running back.
Oh, you know where I like him, though? If the idea is to drop him, you have a 6'3" guy with a long frame that has like a 38-inch vertical.
Well, he was bigger than that even. He was like 6'4", wasn't he?
Yeah, so if you're going to run a hook zone or some type of zone across the middle with a guy like that, he's going to take away a lot of passing lanes. I like that aspect of it. I don't think you put him on like a running back and say, hey, go cover a Texas route or something. But play that middle zone. I think you could do that. I think you can run with a tight end up the seam. All right, let's shift to the next guy. Interested your take on this one. So Arthur Scott also committed. Let's put that film up. Arthur Scott, 6'3", 290-pound defensive lineman coming out of Streetsboro, Ohio, offers from Michigan State, Cincinnati, Rutgers, among others. I'll tell you, the first thing that stands out to me, and this is a bigger theme, Justin, is the last couple of years, I feel like this staff has done a great job of recruiting guys who you don't need to project quite as much. Yeah. Like Scott's 290. You already have a pretty good feel of how he's going to move. That's true on the offensive line too, right? If you remember back to the previous staff, there were a lot of 260-pound guys that would come in. You have to bulk them up. Mm-hmm. This is a guy you can see the floor, right? You can see a guy who I think can be stout against the run, who has some strength and some power. I think he's a couple years away, though, and I'm not 100% sure on the burst.
Yeah, the burst is what I question. We'll see what happens once he gets into a college strength and conditioning program. And I'd like to see a little more violence from him in terms of his tackling. He's one of the biggest guys on the field. I would love to see him show it when he's tackling guys. There's a lot of grabbing and clutching with the hands rather than just impact. And I want to see him, like, that's one of the things that stands out with Carmelo Reed. When he actually hits somebody, he demolishes them. I want to see more of that. Honestly, I think that this is a guy that with a couple of years, you get him with Whitlow and you get him in strength conditioning, that you're looking at a guy who can be a really productive piece in the rotation for the class.
I do want to point out, I forgot to mention this. I put it up on the banner, but Matthew Anderson says Venables knows linebackers. Kid is good. Speaking of Wenzel, Oklahoma was an offer for Wenzel. So you're speaking the pedigree of Ben Wenzel. Yeah, I agree with you. You get a guy like this, shifting back to Scott, you get him with Whitlow, who I think is a really good coach, a good developer of people. You get him in that Brady Collins scheme. Mm-hmm. And here's the other thing I would say that I think gets missed sometimes. What are the hardest positions to, at the high school level, really evaluate? Quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, it's probably those three. So at some level, what I'm saying is you just got to get big bodies. You got to get big bodies. And there is an element of if a kid is a hard worker and a great character kid, and he has the size, and by the way, he plays with really nice leverage, which a lot of high school defensive linemen don't. You know, he has enough tools to be an impact defensive lineman, at least in a rotation. Yeah. And if you get that out of anybody at the high school level, it's a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Any last thoughts on these three, Justin, before we take one last break, shift into, if you guys have any questions, I got a couple things starred. I also want to talk about Hopkins a little bit. Anything on these three guys before we wrap up here?
I think that it's a good start to the group from this weekend. There is more coming, people, so pay attention tomorrow. But it's a good start. I think we'll see what happens with the defensive line room. I'm curious to see if we decide to take another one or not. But going forward, I think that I really like that the amount of bodies that we're getting in that room. I trust Whitlow as a coach. I think we're setting ourselves up for a good position for next year where you have, 9-10 defensive linemen that you have to choose from, where you can find a couple of guys that you feel really strongly about.
Yeah, and Will in the chat, I think Justin just answered your question. We'll ask, will there be another addition or two in the next 3 or 4 days? There will be usually, and this has happened for the last couple of years, they'll space some of these commitments out. Each kid kind of has their moment, and it also keeps the Badgers in the news cycle. It's actually kind of a really savvy media job that they do there, kind of spacing out the commitments. So expect a couple more for sure. We're going to take a quick break here, come back with some of your questions. And I want to talk about Ryan Hopkins, who was on campus as well as obviously a committed official visitor. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show. And as always, man, a quick second to say thank you for tuning into Locked On Badgers. Really do appreciate everybody coming in and being part of this amazing community, as well as Justin jumping on as well to lend us his brain. Justin, let's talk committed official visitors. You had Bardo on campus. You had Elam's on campus. I think most importantly, and I said this in a group chat before we even jumped on, maybe the most important thing that happens this weekend is getting Ryan Hopkins in and solidifying him.
Yeah, I think we both discussed that. We want to see that guy take over and take the reins as the class leader. And I think that they needed to kind of make sure that they had him fully on board and was locked in. And it feels like that's what happened. We'll see what goes on going forward, but I think they did a good job of kind of getting him in that role and being able to move forward now. I think that's a big deal for Wisconsin. You need to get that guy who can kind of be the one that everyone kind of rallies around. Honestly, coming into this weekend, it was Tayshawn Bardo, and it honestly was for most of the visit too. That guy was working this class. People that are paying attention on Twitter would really notice he's doing everything he can to get Washington and Pettit here.
Yeah.
I love both those guys. I would absolutely love it if they could get those two in the class. But he is working.
Yeah, Bardo is a great representative for this program right now. And I'll say this too, Bardo may not have the upside of a Pettit or a Washington, but he adds his own unique skill set to it. Yeah. Like you get the burner like a Washington, and Bardo's kind of that route runner who can run the whole route tree on the other side. They're nice complementary pieces if you can get that high upside guy to go with Bardo.
Absolutely.
So here's my thing with Hopkins, and I think you hit on a lot of it, but it's going to be a battle to keep him, because if he does what I think he's going to do at Mater Dei, which isn't even necessarily dominate, but it's to show it's going to take a couple clips. Watch this, a couple clips of him running 80 yards, outpacing D1 cornerbacks, outrunning angles, and other coaches are going to take more notice.
Yeah. Well, and part of the issue is that now he's going to have enough talent on the field that people are going to really have to perk their ears up and pay attention defensively when they do it, which is going to leave him opportunities.
Hold on here. JB asked the question. JB, I don't even know what question you asked, man. I'm trying to triple task here. But it sounds like Will answered it, so that's all good. A couple other starred comments I have here, Justin. Brian Erdman, did any quarterback show up this week? And we did talk about that. Ryan Hopkins. Tyler Reynolds, Amari Latimer season loading. So Amari Latimer, the big-time 4-star running back that came in, official visit. The Badgers did have a crystal ball for him, did not commit, at least as of now. This is something that we're hoping to lock down this weekend, Justin, and it could still happen. But until that happens, you got to keep recruiting running backs because you have to give yourself some insurance.
Yeah, I honestly, my perspective on this, and we talked a little bit about before we came into the show, I'm a little annoyed because it feels like we cut down some visits that were guys that we felt pretty good about. I really like Jamal Rule, actually. I don't think he's quite as much ceiling as what you probably have with Latimer, but I think he could have been a really good all-around back. And that's a guy who's not visiting now because of where you felt about Latimer. And now sounds like he's going to take all his visits.
Yeah, which I always feel like kids should take visits until they know for sure, right? Like I think about what would I do in that situation? Well, first of all, Ryan was not mature enough to be in that situation to begin with at that age. But I want people to take visits to be sure of where they commit. So I don't know, man. I wasn't expecting a Latimer commitment this weekend. I mean, you and I talked before this weekend, and I kind of said that. So to me, this just feels like recruiting, and this is what recruiting a 4-star running back with offers everywhere feels like. You're going to have to battle for him.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that necessarily, but I I don't like where we're sitting right now. I think there's a lot of pressure on being able to lock down Ryan Estrada in the next weekend's class. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think you absolutely have to do everything you can to lock that kid down. So at this point, it's a huge deal to me that you get somebody in the class that you feel comfortable with. And I don't honestly know where they're at with Estrada. I mean, we can't be in a terrible spot that he's on our second weekend, but I don't know if we're his top team. I don't know if we're his second top, highest team. I know he took a Missouri visit this weekend. Sounds like he didn't commit. We'll see what that means. But there's also, he recently picked up an Alabama offer, which I believe he's got a visit with them. He had an Oklahoma offer. And there's been talk that Oklahoma State is pretty high on his board. So I think if you're Wisconsin, you really need to get this locked in, and you have to have it so that you're not worried about this situation. You need somebody in the class.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the offers he picked up, the Bama and some of those. Is he my question with Estrada, and I'm curious where you're at on this one, is he good enough if he's the only running back you take in a class? Because he is I don't want to say he's a gadget guy, but he might be kind of a gadget guy of this size.
I think that he's got some James White too. I think he can do that. And I think you pick up on that when you look at his film, and Rajiv and I were talking about it. We talked for 2.5 minutes. And when we were done at that point, he was still scoring like 40-yard touchdowns. And I'm like, this film is the most ridiculous running back film I've ever seen. Like, it's all 30, 40, 50-yard touchdown runs. And it's him just weaving through people. And I'm like, he's got great vision. He's really quick with his decision-making and getting downhill. Great vision. The kid is absolutely electric when he gets in the open field. He would have been a huge pickup. And there was talk, I know, for a while where people thought that he might not come in for a visit. And I'm like, I think that would be a mistake. Like, I really like his film. I think that he had something. There was somebody brought up to me that they thought that I'm being too low on Dupree. And I'm like, I think he's got an extra gear that Dupree doesn't have. I think Estrada has a chance to be a 4-4 guy. I don't think that Dupree has that. I think Dupree's going to be a 4-5 guy most of his career. I think they can both be really explosive in open space, but I think Estrada's got more top end.
Yeah, my Lord Lester, Latimer, Estrada would be a nice combo. Yeah, I think Estrada has more of a top end. Dupree's stronger though. Dupree in the lower half is just stronger.
He's just a bigger back in general. Like he's closer to being a guy who you can look at as being a every down back. It's just I don't think he runs that way.
Y'all in the chat got me messed up talking about my hat. I'm gonna wear it backwards. I don't care. P says the next Garendo. Hopefully they use him more than Garendo if he's that good. Like
he's not that kind of burner. Garendo was a 4-3 dude.
Garendo is so fast. And
he was actually a pretty big back. He was like 220 by the time he left.
And he had hands, man, on an offense that couldn't move the ball at times.
Estrada's going to be like a 205 guy, maybe 210 max.
Yeah. No, I like Estrada too. I do think you want to get two pieces with him, though. I'm just not convinced Estrada is enough.
You want somebody who can take more punishment, because I don't know if you don't want him taking 20 reps. Like that, that's going to get him beat up.
Justin, let's go out on this note. Was this a successful weekend? Like coming off it and knowing that there's more to come, we know there's more to come, but does this feel right now, immediate reaction, gut reaction, do you feel like they hit a home run, a double, a single? Give me a baseball
analogy. I think it's a double right now. I think there's a couple pieces that can move that up that we need to see how they fall. You and I have talked a lot about it. I'm a huge Pettit fan. I absolutely think that he has a chance to be an absolute freak of nature here. I love Washington. It sounds like they made a good impression on him. So you get those two pieces, you find a way to get Latimer in this class, and I would view this, it would be a home run for me for this.
You got Blair out there too, right? Maybe they hit a home.
And it sounds like they killed his visit. So that is a highly contested recruitment. Yep. You look at his list, and I believe he's got the homeschool Tennessee on it. He's got Ole Miss. There's one more on there. He's got another big name that's on that list. It might be Oklahoma. But he's got a really impressive list of visits that he's taking. So it's not that we can't do it, because we've absolutely seen Blazek do that. You had a guy like Paulo last year who was supposed to take a visit to Alabama and ended up not taking it. But you've got to get it done. Like this is going to be one for that one. And I think Blazek is a guy who's capable of doing that. But I would be shocked if he didn't take at least one more visit.
Yeah, he's proven he could do it. You mentioned Powell, but also Watts. You know, you can go down the list of some guys that he's really won big time recruitments for. And listen, Wisconsin sells itself in the summer. Wisconsin offensive lineman, nice weather.
Oh yeah, perfect. It was a perfect visit weekend.
Yeah, and Blair is all of 6'6". Like he is a prototypical type of tackle. Would be a massive get for this team. All right, Justin, man, we are going to wrap it there. Again, everybody tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in as always. Thank you for being part of this community. I know there's a billion things you could listen to, whether you're watching live, whether you're on the podcast later, listening while you should be working. That's cool. I don't care. I'm not your boss. Whatever you're doing, thank you for being part of this community. Appreciate the absolute heck out of you. On Wisconsin, a bunch of more content coming up this week. A couple more people breaking down official visits. I think we have a recruit coming on this week. It's going to be a fun week for sure. And then more people are going to pop. So stick here on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk later. Thank you, Justin, for jumping on. Go check him out on the Bucky Report. Let's go.